this is going to sound, it's maybe crazy to a lot of people who hear this. And I've talked to a lot of friends about this, and it's always a very intriguing conversation. But I track every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out.
Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Today, we've got the Todd Schwartzman. Todd is a musician, turned tech sales, turned real estate, living his life on his terms. Man, welcome to the show. Glad to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet, man. So let's dig into it. I like your short and sweet bio you sent over. So musician, turned tech sales, turned real estate. Let's just start with the musician. What kind of music are you into? What kind of musician are you?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk the whole podcast about music,
right?
If you want. So that kind of like that bio describes the different phases of my life. Basically, I spent the majority of the years of my life focused on music in various ways. So I was a music major in college. Spent all my growing up years doing performing and composing, singing, the whole deal, and all throughout college. And then for many years after college, spent a chunk of my life as a career musician, just doing professional music from job to job. And anyway,
That's awesome.
Then career took a major shift and went different directions.
That's cool. So you say composing, that makes me think of like Mozart and stuff. Are you like in a band, or you like compose, like what does that mean?
I did the whole gamut. So I did, I grew up training classically in music. So I started piano from a very young age and then stuck with piano. So piano was my main instrument. And then I took up jazz later in life, and that kind of became a main focus of mine later in life. And then I took up songwriting, and that was actually my focus in college. I was focusing on songwriting and producing. And so spent a lot of years doing songwriting, and then spent a lot of years in different bands, doing the business side of bands as well. So, and it's, as a musician, you tend to have your hands in all kinds of different pots. That's how musicians are.
Mm-hmm. So you switched over and got more into sales from the musician world. I guess just more for extra capital and leverage in life, as opposed to passion, I would assume. But yeah, so I'm sure you're still doing music on the side and in your free time, but you start getting in the sales world. And then what led you into real estate as an investment? What kind of put that on the radar for you?
So you're right. I had a whole career transition into tech sales. And so started a whole new career trajectory. And that basically placed me into like a different career atmosphere, you could say. So, I started to ramp up in sales and see success in my sales career. And basically I think it honestly was just proximity around different sales and real estate folks who opened my mind to that entire world. And so I think I just started to become just exposed to it through the people I started to hang around in the sales world.
Okay, awesome. So a lot of the sales people you're around kind of bled into the real estate as they were doing investing and buying and doing stuff. You kind of like started learning about that as well.
That's right. And then to jump into it, what set me in motion was purchasing my first house when I got married. We got married and purchased our first house a few months later. So that was like the start of the journey right there, was just purchasing our first home as a married couple.
That's cool. So, and that was back in 2017?
That's right. Yep.
So when you were buying this home, were you buying it just like with any investment concept in mind, or were you just like, hey, we're getting married, let's have a home, like let's buy a house, like that's what you do? Or was there like, hey, this is an asset that could be valuable? Was there any of that concept there yet?
There was, and that was because of an awesome, trusted mentor I had on my side helping me buy this house with an investment mindset. So I had the right coach on my side. So it definitely was not a mindless purchase. Like, we bought it for the purpose of an investment right off the bat. And I'm so glad, looking back. I mean, that really having the right person on my side to help coach something that I had never done was a difference maker for me. So got in that first property was a great decision.
Yeah, that's really cool. And I don't think that's the story for most people, right? I feel like most people, they buy a house because that's what you do. They need a place to live. And then they realize later, oh, it could be an investment. And then they try to pivot. And sometimes it's okay. And sometimes it's like, oh, we would have done things different. So
Yeah.
when you had this mentor, Todd, and you were going to look at buying this first home, what things did what things were you looking for? What was different as opposed to if you were just going to go buy, the cute house for you and your new wife? What things did that mentor encourage you to keep an eye open for, and what did you look and do differently?
Yeah, we looked for the correct floor plan and arrangement for a future rental, and we looked for the right area for a future rental. We looked at certain price points for a rental, not just focusing on having um, like the newest and best house at the time, but something that could have future potential. So we actually bought a house that needed a kitchen renovation, and we basically gutted the kitchen while living there and
Mm,
renovated the
I've done
kitchen.
that. That's always fun. Kitchens are a
Yeah, that
tricky
was a,
remodel. You're like, where do
oh
we
man,
keep our food and cook and stuff?
cooking was not pretty during those few months, but
Oh
yeah,
man.
those are the things we focus on. And I think going back to your original point, one of the main themes throughout my whole journey is leaning on mentors and people who are smarter than me and know what they're doing. So, um, like I said, having this mentor with me from the beginning, I don't think I would have known. I don't think I know I wouldn't have known to look for these things, but it was my coach that basically said, "Hey, you know, location, you want to do some value add, you want to make sure the floor plan is the right, for renting out by the bedroom or whatever you want to do with it." So anyway, it was all lined up from the beginning.
That's awesome. So when you say floor plan, what would be a different floor plan for a investment property versus, what you would just buy for you and your wife?
Yeah, so this particular one had a basement rental, which is just such a classic, classic strategy.
Yeah.
Um,
Money.
and then and then aside from that, if it didn't have a basement rental, we were looking for to maximize bedroom count, right? So you want to make sure you're maximizing your bedroom count with the purchase price of the property. A lot of folks who are doing the same strategy go in and look to see where they can add a bedroom. So that's another.
hmm
So we had all those options floating around from the very beginning.
And you're in a college town. Did you end up pivoting and like renting this to students and stuff like that? Is that what
Yep.
all right. Yeah. So is that after you guys moved out, you rented it out to students? Did you have people in the basement while you were there? Cause you mentioned it might have a basement apartment.
Yeah. Yes. And yes. Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. So I love it. You're going in with a strategic house hack as is. When you move, you're able to maximize it, get cash flow, or at least get it to cover. I mean, you were probably cash flowing back in 2017,
Oh,
right
those
off the bat when you
were the
moved
days.
out.
Yeah, those were the
Yeah.
days. Yep.
Yeah. How long were you in the home for?
We were there for probably 2 years, I want to say. Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
maybe three,
Okay.
maybe 3 years. Yeah.
Awesome. So you started, now you've done, I mean, in the past like 5 or so years, you've done about 5 or so deals. So kind of walk us through these deals. So you do this first kind of like intentional house hack with a pivot to move out and rent it out and maximize. And I just think that's so powerful. So many people just buy the cute house with the, turquoise door and, whatever. Maybe they want a big house. And then when they go to rent it out, it's not rentable, right? It won't cash flow. No, they can't maximize anything. And then they just have to sell it, and then they lost that asset. And
Yeah.
you guys, like I said, look, hopefully, credit to your coach, but you guys were able to do it right on the first house. What did you guys do the second house? Was it rinse and repeat, or was there any different strategy?
So the next investments were out of state investments.
Okay.
So, yeah. So again, using a coach, this same coach actually, the next investments were out of state. Um, we certainly could have rinse and repeat this house hack strategy, but
Mm-hmm.
at the time, it just made sense. We had some opportunity to look at homes. One is in Tennessee and one is in Florida, and
Mm.
it was just a very like hands off type of no brainer purchase. And so we decided to go with that instead of doing the primary thing.
I love it. So doing the out of state thing. So that's something a lot of people are interested in. A lot of people are intimidated by. You said it's pretty hands off. How did you structure that? Did you have people on the ground? Was this like a partner deal with other groups that are already doing it, or how did you structure those deals out of state?
Yeah, this was with a group who is already doing it. So basically, I was introduced to this group who is amazing, and I can connect folks who are listening to this with this group afterwards if you'd like. But basically, they have all of the work set up for you. And I know there's lots of people around the country who do something like this, but they have boots on the ground in different markets around the country, and they are the ones who set up the property management relationship. So you just use their local property manager. They have the lender relationship set up who knows, does lending specific to that area. They have people who are out searching for the deals, who basically the only deals they present to investors are the ones who meet their criteria. And so it makes it so easy that I didn't really have to analyze or, seek out all the individual components of the house. They just present it to me and say, hey, this is a deal that's already vetted. If you'd like to invest, it's yours. That type of thing.
That's great. Awesome. I love that. Yeah. So you did a couple deals with them. Is that what you did for all your other deals, or was there any other strategies? We've got the house hack, we got the partnership deal thing, and just structure on that. And you can mention the company if you want to, whatever. Was this like a partnership thing, or you paid them like a commission, or where are they making money? And where are you, maybe taking a little bit of a haircut, but it makes it so much easier. It's worth it. Like how is that structured?
Yeah, it's structured. So I'm 100% owner. So it's not a partnership deal. So I own the house. Where this company makes their money is they do a one-time upfront fee. So it's in the closing cost basically. So I pay a little bit more of closing cost, where their fee is basically just a line item in the closing. And that's where, so they kind of make a commission, you could call it, for presenting the deal. But then after that, it's a 100% owned deal.
That's awesome. And I'm sure they're making money, as the agent and as the property manager and all these things. And that's what's cool about real estate. It can be such a win-win, right? It's like somebody's got to do it. You might as well, have someone that can help you all achieve your goals together. So that's cool. So you do your house hack, you get into this kind of done for you type deal that you pay a fee to be able to play in. What's the next phase? What's the next deal after that? Is that kind of what you keep doing, or what happens after that?
Yeah, the next phase after that was I made an intentional effort to jump up in property size. So the next thing I purchased was an 8-plex, along with so I have a partner in this one, along with a buddy of mine. We tackled an 8-plex together as 50-50 partners.
Cool. So is this out of state, or is this in Utah?
This one's in Utah.
Sweet. So you guys are doing this to, a little closer to home, so you can have a little hands-on to it, doing it as a partnership, tackling an 8-plex. Now you're getting into commercial, which for the listeners, some people, it's still residential, as that you're renting it out to, individuals who live in it like their home. You're not like a commercial space selling products. But as soon as you get above 4 units, when you have that 5, 6, 7, 8, you're now into commercial lending, commercial loans, commercial lenders, and commercial valuations. So tell us a little bit, Todd, about why you wanted to jump into that world, and kind of the different things that excited you about being on the commercial side instead of just residential.
Yeah. So a lot of people out there say that a medium or large size deal is just as much work as a single family home. And I would agree with that. So my motivation was I wanted to take a bigger bite of real estate. I wanted to just kind of put some fuel to the fire and get things moving faster, as opposed to smaller bites. And it really does. Like you said, there's some differences in the commercial world, but I really do think that these larger size deals, it's not even large, medium size, whatever, is just about the same amount of work. So
Mhm.
uh, that idea right there kind of like bought me in. I mean, I didn't necessarily know that going into it, but after that, I mean, it was like, all right, I'm not opposed to the smaller things at all. You have to take opportunities where they come, but I just like the fact that you can get more done efficiently. Like, why
I
not?
think that I think that's a really powerful rule, and it's actually like a list of like my investing rules, and that's one of my rules is like the little deals can take up just as much headache and bandwidth as bigger deals. Like I remember there was one time I didn't have much capital or anything to work with, but I wanted to be doing something. I ended up snagging this little like mobile home deal, and and once it was all said and done, I was like, dude, that took just as much effort and headache and all this stuff as, $1 million home in Hawaii. It was just like, wow, like play bigger, play bigger. Because yeah, the rewards are bigger. You play bigger games, you get bigger rewards, but you're still gonna run the race either way. You know what I mean? And so you might as well. So I love that you kind of point that out.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. I agree.
So you go and get this. What were some of the differences though? So you're saying it's not like this huge, like 10 times as hard to do, but it is different. There are some nuances that are different in how you vet it out. And what were some of the things you discovered? Like, oh, this is different doing commercial than like single family residential.
Yeah, one of the main differences is obviously the loan process. A commercial loan is different. And I'm not
Hmm.
sure if I can recall every single detail, but basically the qualifications and just how loan companies look at that is a different. It's a whole different world. So that's one of
Hmm.
the main details. One of the things I actually like about the larger size properties is that everybody involved in the team, like agents or lenders or property managers, whatever, they are they are looking at this with an investment mindset as well. And
Mm.
oftentimes, with single family homes, you're trying to kind of like pivot the perspective. You're trying to use a home as an investment tool where maybe it's not that originally. You're just trying to either house hack it or like, turn it into some sort of creative rental that it wasn't originally supposed to be, which is fine and it works. But I really enjoy just the straightforward strategy of like, in the commercial world, this is an investment. This is how we view it. This is how the numbers work out. And there's really no like, you know, flip flopping around it. I mean, you obviously do your creative value adds to it and you try to raise rents, you do renovations and everything, but it's more of a science with the commercial side. I personally like that. Like my organized brain appreciates that about commercial.
Well, and I like what you mentioned because yeah, everybody's on the same page with it. Because when you
Yes.
go buy an 8 unit, your broker, the agents that are helping you take this down, they are familiar with investment properties because that's all that you do. No one buys an eightplex as a primary. You can't, right? But
Yeah.
most real estate agents, even ones that work with investors, a lot of them really don't know much or anything about investing. All they know how to do is help, young couples move into a house, right? And
Yeah.
so just on the broker agent side, I think that's really powerful. And then like say on the lending side and just the evaluation, I always say it's especially for those who are newer and they're getting into something, it the bank, the lender is actually going to be one of your best like due diligence partners because they don't want to get into a mess and they're basically going to like make sure you don't get into a piece of junk that's going to destroy you financially because then it's going to hurt them. And so
Yeah.
like if they're like saying no, 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 no because of XYZ, you're like, yeah, yeah, I don't want to do that anyway. But if they give you the thumbs up, you're probably pretty good, which isn't necessarily the case on single family. Single family, they're just like, yeah, if you qualify, here's some money, and it could be a disaster.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that note, I go back to the lesson I've learned many times is that I've learned to make sure to align myself with people who have the know how. I mean, this is maybe an obvious statement, but not everyone in the real estate industry or not everyone you come across who says they do real estate or do this is going to have the same perspective as you. Maybe
Mm,
someone comes from a background of flipping, or maybe someone comes
yeah.
from a background of they want to put all of their own money into it instead of using other people's money. So they really don't have experience one way or the other. So I've been very careful to align myself with people who make sure that they're seeing things in the same way I am. Like, hey, this is a buy and hold investment for me. I'm looking at this in a 10-year perspective. And, if that person isn't really aligned with me, it's not going to jive. Like, it's not going to work. So I've been very careful with these mentors, agents, anyone. These are people that I don't take lightly to be working with.
Oh man, I love that. There's so much power in when you have clarity of purpose, like what you're trying to accomplish. You don't need to know how, but if you know what you're trying to do, then
Yes.
you kind of like the pieces will fall into place and you'll push all the riffraff aside and you'll be able to do it. But if you didn't really know what you're doing, then you get this one person and they have their perspective. This one has their perspective. And then it kind of can be contradictory and get messy. But the reason that worked, and I love how you point that out, Todd, is like, you knew what you wanted. And then you're able to kind of like, curate your team and those around you based on your specific goal. Because if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have been able to do it at all.
It's a great point, and that's a good way to put it. You really don't need to know all of the details of how. Get the right people on your team, and you're going to figure out how. Just make sure to get the right people on your team that know your goals and will be able to take you there better than you would be able to go by yourself.
Yeah, and if the goal is clear, then the right people will come around to show you how. I love that.
Yeah.
Talking about goals, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, Todd, about just kind of your unique approach to managing personal finance. I know you kind of have put a lot of thought into how you manage money and the way you do it. I thought maybe you could kind of share that with us and we can dive into that.
Yeah, this is probably my favorite subtopic within real estate. And I would even consider it, for me, this is really personal finance is like my passion. And I think that my personal finance, theories or habits are really what fuel real estate. Like, real estate is kind of the byproduct of it's where I've put money into investing. People can invest in lots of ways, but really the root of this is personal finance. So, when it comes down to it, over the years, I've just really carefully put a lot of thought into how I manage my money. And this is going to sound, it's maybe crazy to a lot of people who hear this. And I've talked to a lot of friends about this, and it's always a very intriguing conversation, but I track every dollar that comes in and every dollar that goes out. And the reason I do that is because the entire purpose of my tracking, I track it just like someone would track if you're tracking your diet in MyFitnessPal.
Mm-hmm.
Every day what you're spending, how many calories you're eating, and how many calories you're burning. And the goal is to be in like a calorie deficit if you're trying to lose weight, right? Well, the goal in personal finance is that you want to have a gap between your spending, what it costs to live, and your income. And that gap right there is what allows you to build wealth. It allows you to go out and invest in real estate if you want. It allows you to create a future that is faster and better than everyone else around you if you can manage this gap. And so that's kind of like, personally, that's what I consider to be my cash flow. A lot of people talk about passive income, their cash flow, right, from their properties. I have that and I focus on that, but I also, my second form of cash flow is the gap between my expenses and income. And I am meticulous about making sure that gap right there is where I need it to be in order to aggressively invest in real estate.
I love that. I like the analogy. If anybody hasn't, used MyFitnessPal or tracked their calories or macros, maybe they might miss it a little bit. But like you said, it's like, you need to have a calorie deficit to lose weight, right? And so if you have that, I love that comparison. What do you use then to be able to track all that? Because some people will be like, oh, I could just spend all day, every day, just like, and it's messy. And they're like, what, are you writing on like a stick-it note? Like, how do you track every penny you spend? That seems kind of tricky. And what do you do with it?
Yeah. So I use a software program, and I've used it for the past few years. I love it. I'd recommend it to anyone. The program is called Tiller, Tiller.
Okay.
And what it is it's essentially a software that links all your credit cards, all your bank accounts, everything, and pulls everything into one spreadsheet. And you can then customize the spreadsheet and keep track of everything. You create your own categories. So for example, like groceries, gas, gifts, vacations, clothes, everything, all your spending, and you can track it all right there. So I'm meticulous about, I mean, I'm in there every week and I'm tracking all. You can, set it up automatically, and I'm tracking all expenses.
That's cool. So that's actually like, man, I'm a nerd, I guess. That excites me because I'm like, yeah, like the thing is when you track something, you can see its performance and you're able to adjust it and tweak it and know what you really need to do to change, which is exciting. So I mean, is it super time consuming? You said you're on it just like every week. It's not something you're spending hours a day on. You just go
No,
in and
no.
kind of get updated regularly.
Yeah, you go in and update it. And like I said, I've been doing it for years. There's a few huge benefits to doing it that I'm really personally bought into. And again, this is just for me having done it for years that I've seen for me and my wife, this works really well. But one is well, first of all, it creates awareness. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't know what the gap is between their expenses and their income is. A lot of people have no idea.
Sure.
Um, and a lot of people don't even know what it costs. Like if I asked anyone listening, like, what does it cost you annually to live? You and your family, what do you just to live paycheck to paycheck, what amount do you have to make? And I think a lot of people don't know that. And then the
Oh,
next
they'll be
question
off by
is,
thousands. It's like, oh, I think it's around 2 or 3 thousand. And then they like run the numbers like, oh, I guess it's more like 5 or 6. Like it's crazy how off we can be on that.
yeah. And then, and then I have a few thoughts here. One would be we place such an emphasis on in the real estate world on passive cash flow, right? Like, oh, this property, I can make $500 a month off of this investment. Oh yeah, that's a great ROI. I would do that. But then when it comes to our personal finance, how often are we frivolously spending $500 a month where you don't even know where it goes? And all of a sudden,
Hmm.
the $500 that you valued so much over here becomes completely worthless over here. And so this is
This
one of
is
the main
great.
reasons why I believe in tracking personal finance is because why are we so concerned about adding an extra $500 a month to our income when in reality we really don't care about $500 a month? Because if you cared about $500 a month, you would not be frivolously spending it. It's just that our value system is off. Where there's certain habits ingrained in society, in how we were raised, in our parents' views, in habits that have crept in, that we just become unaware of our own spending. And so let me keep, can I make a couple other points here that
Yeah,
I'm,
no, this is great. I'm loving this.
so uh, some people might listen to this and say, okay, I see the value in that, but I'm not struggling. Like, I'm not poor. I always have leftover money each month. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. So I'm
Yeah, we're
good.
good. I don't want to stress about it. Like
I'm no
whatever.
stress. Here's my response to that is that when you go to the gym and you see someone who's clearly ripped, they have huge muscles and they've clearly worked years for that. And you see them over in the corner lifting, like doing bicep curls, right? No one in their right mind is going to say, wait, why are they doing that? They're already ripped. They don't need to lift weights. Well, it's like, yeah, but what do you think got them there? Like, what do you think they've been doing for the past 10 years? They've been lifting weights. They're not going to let go of the very thing that actually brought them the success. So I just think that we have a certain obligation with, if you want to become wealthy. I think that it's not just about like, oh, I'm fine and the rest I don't care about. I think that there's a certain like domain and control over your money and your spending that you need to have, and those daily habits that get ingrained in you, those are the things that you need to focus on. So it's not about the $8 or the $13 spent on a hamburger. it's about the fact that you're practicing the habit of knowing where your money is going so that you have the control of your money to be able to do the things you want with it. And it's not gone to places you don't even know where it went.
Yeah, and when it's funny because going back to the analogy, like I said, of the fitness stuff, I've tracked my calories and what I eat before and stuff. And sometimes I would go, okay, I'm not gonna worry about my calories or my macros or any of that. I'm just gonna track it though. I'm just gonna put it in my Fitness Pal, but with no goal or anything on it. But man, every time I have to input it, I don't want to eat that Kit Kat because I'm gonna have to put it into the thing, and I don't want to see that on there. And so just tracking, even with no rule or regulation of what the outcome needs to be, it still motivates me to be smarter with what I put in my body. And I'm sure the exact same thing is going to happen with the bank account. It's like, even if I'm like, hey, I don't care, I can spend however the hell I want, I'm just going to track it. But as soon as you do that, you're like, oh, I guess I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that because I don't want to see it on the record,
I think people would be absolutely shocked at the amount that they are spending in things that don't actually matter to them. And so let me make another point I'm really passionate about. Some people hear this. I've shared this with friends, and you might listen to this and say, "Oh, this sounds really frugal. This sounds really like,
yeah, are you poor? Why are you penny pinching?" Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So my response to that is, this is not about saving money. This is not about being frugal. This is about investing money wisely. And I'm very, very passionate about that. In fact, this has been a huge theme that, as my wife and I have practiced this strategy over the years, we kind of have coined this term that we say amongst ourselves. We say high impact versus low impact. So a purchase or an item, we always say, is this high impact or low impact? Meaning, how I would define that is this experience, item, thing going to significantly move the needle of my quality of life? If it is, that thing is high impact. And if it's not, it's low impact. It's lower on the priority list. So let me give an example of that. We just had our first baby this year in 2023, 3 months ago. And thank you. So last year, 2022, we knew that was going to be our timeline. And so we invested heavily into vacations. We spent more on vacations that year than lots of years combined. And that's not, so that was not a reckless abandon. That was on purpose. That was a clear strategy where this was a high impact memory for us that we'll always look back at 2022 and consider that one of our most adventurous years. And you better believe, I tracked that, right? We said, hey, this is our vacation year where we're investing into vacations. We're not spending. So, you have to look back and say that was really important to me, where I think other people might maybe fall into a bad habit of, oh man, we wanted to go on this really nice vacation or maybe multiple vacations, but it turns out we spent thousands of dollars on crappy restaurants or fast food, and also clothes that are sitting in my closet that I actually don't use and I bought on impulse that really make no difference in my life, and now I have to take them to Goodwill. Well, that's not doing anything for you. How is that impacting your life positively at all? So I guess it comes down to the word awareness. It's a very detailed awareness of where you're spending, where you're investing your money and not wasting your money.
Well, and I love that because you're making conscious choices, however you want to make those choices. Tim Ferriss talks about this, where he talks about cutting back harshly on everything that you don't care about and spending lavishly on the things you do. But if you do both of those, then you can, but if you just spend mindlessly on everything, nothing really gets accomplished. And it's funny because, you're talking about oh, some people think this is about being frugal. And I would say it's, for the person that has very, very little money, obviously it's going to be very important to track it and make sure where it's going. But the impact's not actually going to be as impactful as the person that's making a ton. Because if you save $10 or $20 and that's all you have, that's good. But when you're bleeding, 5 or 10,000 extra a month because you're not paying attention, whoa, as soon as you pay attention to that and you can put that into somewhere more powerful, that's going to be a really, really, really big impact. So for the people that aren't penny pinching, that aren't worried about money, it's like they'd be surprised how big of a pivot that could be. I mean, they could be buying literally another real estate property every few months, just if they pivot a couple habits.
Oh, that is such a good way of describing it. Think how many in our real estate world, if you're listening to this, how eager would you be to just find under the couch cushion $50,000, $25,000 that all of a sudden goes into your investing in piggy bank, right? People would go to great lengths to get extra money to invest in their deals, but would they go as far as being disciplined in your own spending? That's the question to ask yourself. So I guarantee this strategy is good for beginners when they're building their habits, when there's actually not much of a cushion. But when you get into, you're right, when you get into the bigger numbers, that's where it really makes a difference. And I would say, going back to one of the original points, like this is when it really makes a difference, is you have those big gaps of money and you can intentionally track the gap between your expenses and your income. And also, as your income grows, your expenses tend to grow. But if you can keep a very conscious view of that, that's where you're going to win. That's where you're going to win. Because if your expenses are going at the equal rate of your income, your investing life doesn't change very much. So what progress are you really making other than maybe you have more money spent at restaurants and in your wardrobe? Like, you're not going to make a dent in your investing.
Yeah, well, I love how you mentioned earlier, it's like the high impact, low impact. Like if you do this right, it's not going to sacrifice your quality of life at all. Like you're not going to feel a loss, even though you are cutting out a lot of spending. You're not going to feel lost because you're looking at what's important, what's not. And going back to just the fitness analogy, if you're eating the correct caloric intake with the correct amount of protein, you're not hungry at the end of the day, even though, you're being very picky about what you're eating and stuff. But at the end of the day, you're like, wait, I'm not hungry anymore. When I used to eat twice as many calories to not be hungry, now I'm just eating the correct calories and I'm not hungry. And so it's the same thing with the spending. If you're spending it correctly on the high impact items that affect your quality of life, you're going to be just as happy at the end of the month and be just as comfortable and have the same quality of life, even though you spend half as much. And then you can do something impactful with that excess.
Yes. And I think, going off that, I think we fall into traps sometimes of like, people think it's a flex to like spend money thoughtlessly. You know what I mean? Sometimes that can be perceived as a flex. That's just maybe I'm so bought into, my mindset, but to me, that is just not a flex. It's not a flex. Like that's just a sign of I don't know, carelessness, or maybe just a certain philosophy. I just feel like that's a big indicator of where personal finances, where your values lie within personal finances. And maybe that's a little judgmental because I don't think that's 100% true across the board. I just think that the real flex is like having such a large gap between having such a large cash flow of excess income that you have choices, you have options. That's the flex to me. That's the ultimate flex. Not like having a bunch of, crap laying around your house that you bought, because it seemed appealing in the moment. I don't feel like that's impressing anyone or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love how it's about designing a life that you want to live and living that life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's like I said, that's the flex is living the quality of life that you want to live. That's more important than all the rest of it. So what was the name of the software you use again? Teller?
Yeah, it's Tiller, Tiler. And I would encourage anyone to go. It's actually really cheap software, not expensive at all. So you go, and I would advise people to download it and start the first few months by simply tracking what you spend. You don't necessarily have to feel the pressure to make major changes off the bat. Just get a sense of where you sit, right? get a sense of where your
Yeah.
habits are. Because I think every family has different habits. Like, oh man, we really, I didn't realize how much we're spending on our car payments plus our mortgage plus all of these debt payments, right? Or another family is saying, man, we really go shopping a lot. I didn't realize that every time we go to the mall together, we're bringing home hundreds of dollars of stuff. And this really adds up to a lot of money at the end of the month. So get a sense for where you sit. And then from there, you'll be able to, because everyone has different habits. You'll start to
Yeah.
know, you'll start to become painfully self-aware of where you need to change.
I think that's great advice, and one thing I think is really powerful because I get I have a lot of students and we'll set up goals. We're like, okay, what is your goal? And everybody, I ask them like, what's their goal? And they, I want passive cash flow. Okay, how much? And they're like, I don't know, like six figures, like 8 or 10,000 a month to be awesome. I'm like, okay, cool, but what if it was 7,000? Well, yeah, that'd be good too. I'm like, well, what if it was 6,000? Well, and it's like we have these arbitrary numbers that don't really create fire in us to go accomplish our goals. And this goes on what you were saying. If you're consciously aware of that $500 cash flow, but you're blowing it over here, if you're aware of what the true number is, you're like, no, I need exactly $5,682.58. And then I don't have to work and everything I spend is covered. Now you've got this true, like purposeful, customized personal goal to hit 5,682 or whatever that number I just said was exactly. And that's when your life will actually start to pivot and shift because now you're out of the rat race.
Yeah.
But if it's 8,000 or 7,000 or 10,000, it's too arbitrary to actually light fire under you. And that's where I think the awareness comes in. Like you're saying, all of this is about being consciously aware because then it becomes real and you actually can see the impact one way or another. And that's when it's like, oh, this will actually change my perspective of how I do everything. It's like when you're learning to eat correctly. I know we keep going this analogy, but if you go buy that, like eat a thing of ice cream, you're like, oh, I know ice cream is not good for me, whatever. But you plug it into your MyFitnessPal and you're like, that was 700 calories of straight carbs. And that was all my carbs for 2 days. Like, you're just like, oh, that's a lot different because it's real as opposed to just like, it's not good for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. See, and enough times through that ice cream analogy, you're going to start to train your brain to realize what impact that ice cream has on you, right? So if you allow yourself, if you just become in the habit of ice cream every day, like you're going to, over time, you're going to start to realize the actual impact of that. So equating that back to personal finance, you're going to start to see if you get locked into a really high car payment, a car that you don't want, maybe you can afford it technically. Like, again, it's not a flex. If you can afford, sure, if you have the money for it, do you want to spend your money on that? So then you start looking at like, I didn't realize like actually how much of my monthly budget is being dedicated to this really expensive car. Now, if you want that, if you value, great. That needs to be an intentional thing. If you actually didn't want to have that burden on your back, why do you have that?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think so many times people are sacrificing so much freedom for things they don't even actually care about, but if you had it tracked, like you're saying, they'd be able to consciously say, I care about this. I care about this. I don't care about these. And that'll cut their freedom and, their time to reaching that freedom goal in half just by cutting out things they don't actually care about. But people they go to a job and they make money and they spend that money and they don't consciously think about like getting out of the rat race and how quickly they can buy their freedom, as opposed to like spending on things that they don't care. And it's like when you look at like, oh, I'm spending some money, that's one thing. But when you say you're sacrificing your freedom for another pair of Lululemon leggings, like who gives a shit? You know what I mean?
So I would say, to kind of like to summarize this, once you start tracking and getting the habit of tracking, the number you'll really want to pay attention to that you have control over is your total monthly spend, right? That's what it costs me and my family every month to live. That's the most important. That's like the sacred number on my spreadsheet where I know it, like even to this day, for the past few years, I know that number because I'm focused on that. And I feel like that number is also so important because you have such control over that number. You have control, like that needs to be the area of focus. So if that number is X amount a month higher than what you want it to be, you need to start digging into the individual items and say, where is this coming from? Like what is causing this? And also, if that number is going up and up and up and up and up, and you feel like you're losing control of that, that's also a problem because, like we already talked about before. But anyway, that's my real like advice. There is that number is your absolute sacred number that you need to watch over and guard with such care, because that's the number that's going to either equal financial freedom or not. And again, why does another door of real estate matter if you're not paying attention to what money is going out the door? And to me, those two things don't match. They both have to matter.
I think that's really powerful. And again, I'll just emphasize this and we'll kind of wrap up here. I know we could just chat on this forever. We're obviously both excited, but I would say, again, this doesn't have anything to do with living frugally. That number, that monthly number could be lavishly large. And if that's what you want it to be, awesome. Just be aware of it and know what it takes to get that number and what it takes to get it passively and what it takes to get it actively. Just know what you're doing. If you want to be spending $50,000 a month, like, okay, that's your number. It doesn't matter, but be aware of it so that you can fit it into your life consciously and intentionally, and not on accident,
Yes. 100%. I couldn't have said it better. This strategy is great for investing wisely and even big spenders, because those are intentional decisions at the end of the day. Yep.
I love it, man. This is exciting. And I think like you said, it's like, it really is sometimes actually the heart and soul and that foundation to the real estate investing. Some people are like, oh, why are they talking about budgeting? That's not real estate investing. It's like, but it really is in so many ways. For me, it was huge. That was exactly what I did when I got into it. It's like I started budgeting every single penny just to see exactly where I was at. And then I knew what I could do. And then every door was literally life changing. It's like, oh, that means I can go. Now I get this door, and now I've got this payment covered. Now I get this door, and I can get a boat, and I get this. It all has something, but I still have my freedom. I'm not getting caught up in anything. So it's all can be very, very impactful once you start tracking it. Anyway, I want to bust into our final 4 questions, and then we'll let you go. You've got a young kid, you got a wife, you got a life to live. We won't keep you forever, but if people do want to kind of reach out to you or follow you or kind of see what you're doing, is there a good way to keep in touch?
Yeah, Instagram. My handle is at Todd Schwartzman. It's just my full name, and my email is the same thing, toddschwartzman@gmail.com.
Awesome. I like your quote on there. Shout out to The Office. I was looking at your Instagram. You have a quote from Michael Scott, like, don't ever do anything to anyone for any reason at all, or something like that. I was like, that was good. I like that. All right. So we'll dig into your final 4, Todd. Okay. Number 1, what's your dream deal or a deal you would hope to be able to tackle someday?
I would love to, well, this is going back to lifestyle. I would love to have a personal home in like a dream area. And maybe that's kind of a roundabout answer. But again, the investments allow you to do certain things in your personal life that you want to. So I would love to eventually own, like a vacation home in just a dream type spot. And that's, I would say the deals allow you to get that. So that's like my roundabout answer there.
Cool. All right. Question number 2. What's been one of the most pivotal books you've ever read?
Oh, you already know what I'm going to say based on my whole finance spiel. Atomic Habits, no doubt about it. Atomic Habits is, I feel like that's, if you pick one book in all of, personal motivation, I feel like that would be it. I'm just such a believer in small habits create big outcomes, and not just personal finance, but other things. But I've applied it really heavily in personal finance. So Atomic Habits all the way.
Love it. Great recommendation. All right. What is one of the most expensive or interesting mistakes you've made in real estate investing?
Oh, I lost some earnest money on a house before. Backed out of a deal when I didn't do enough. Didn't do enough due diligence, early moves on it, and backed out and lost money. I wouldn't say, that would be my lost
Sure.
money. Yeah.
So just to dig into that a little bit for any listeners, just so they can learn the lesson. So you put the earnest money down and then you waited till after your due diligence deadlines and it was too late to back out, but you still backed out and you lost the earnest money. Was there a reason why you backed out post the due diligence deadlines as opposed to before?
I don't remember all the details of that one, but I remember there was enough built up that we hadn't caught that was just, all right, either you lose the earnest money or you do a deal you don't want to do. And so we said, let's walk away.
Cool. I think that's wise. Sometimes that's what you got to do. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's cool. I think that's a really good example of a simple way people could lose money that they don't have to lose if they maybe did a little more due diligence, leave it a little previously. Or it's also really good advice. Like I said, it's like sometimes you need to cut your losses early. Don't jump into a deal and lose 50,000 or 100,000 or just have this mess on your hands that you don't want because of a couple of $1,000 of earnest money. Like don't let the tail wag the dog,
Yeah.
Cool. Good lessons to learn there. All right. Last question, then we'll let you go on your way. This one's easy. Everybody's been listening lately. They know my new question. Well, what's the purpose of life, Todd?
Purpose of life. I think the purpose of life is to achieve the maximum amount of personal capability that you can offer to the earth. I think that everyone comes with a different set of strengths and talents, and you have your unique thing to offer the world and people around you. And I think the purpose is to figure out what that is and then achieve it to the very maximum you can with the amount of years that you're gifted on this earth.
I love it. Anybody listening, I would click the little rewind button and just listen to that one or two more times. That was concise but powerful. That was actually money, dude. I appreciate it. Well, sweet man, this has been a treat. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, of course, Joe. Good to talk to you.
Yep. This is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to be aware and act intentionally.